Welcome to the deep dive, where we take your source material, all the research, the articles, the raw notes, and, well, we try to turn all that complexity into clarity. And today, if you're a developer working in Gen AI, you know things are moving at just a breakneck pace.
Right.
But that speed, it comes with a cost. You're always caught between these tough choices.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you go with a heavy code-driven approach for control or, a low-code UI to move faster? How do you avoid getting locked into one vendor when models change literally every day?
And the big one for enterprise systems, right? How do you
Yeah.
actually plug in things like observability or a microservice component platform and MCP?
Exactly. These are the real friction points that slow down innovation.
Yeah.
And that's why we're doing this deep dive on a tool designed to, well, cut right through that mess, Langflow.
So our mission today is pretty straightforward. We want to give you a quick but still very technical understanding of what Langflow is, and maybe more importantly, how it actually changes the way a developer works. At its core, Langflow is an open source visual studio.
Yeah.
It's built for developers to design, to test, and then deploy really sophisticated AI systems.
Sophisticated. Okay, when you say sophisticated, what are we actually talking about here? What kind of systems?
We're talking about two really crucial categories. The first is Gen AI workflows, which are your complex, multi-step chains, a sequence of calls and data transformations.
Right.
But the second is Agentic RAG, and this is where I think the magic really happens. RAG retrieval, augmented generation, is all about grounding an AI in your own private data. Agentic RAG lets the agent not just retrieve that data, but actually take actions with it using external tools.
And Langflow makes building all of that drag and drop.
Drag and drop simple.
That right there, that gets to the first major point from the sources. This idea of visual simplification. You're moving away from pages and pages of code just to connect things to a visual canvas.
And that visualization isn't just, a pretty interface.
Yeah.
It's what enables the ultimate flexibility for any developer. Vendor lock-in is a constant headache.
A nightmare.
It is. If you build your whole system on one platform and then their prices go up or performance dips, you're stuck. Langflow's answer to this is being completely model and vector store agnostic.
Which is a huge technical advantage, especially for businesses that are worried about costs and just being agile long term. So you're saying it supports dozens of providers right out of the box.
Dozens. You have total freedom. You can stick with one vendor you trust, or you can mix and match, maybe use one provider for embedding, a different one for the generation step, all in the same workflow. And crucially, it also supports local models.
That's big. For privacy or cost-sensitive stuff, that's a must-have.
It is.
So we've got this incredible ease of use on one side, the visual builder, but, with low-code platforms, that speed, it usually costs you control. You get stuck in their box. Is Langflow different?
That is a great question, and it's the perfect way to get into the most powerful part of its architecture. The entire system is Python under the hood. This isn't some proprietary closed-off graphical thing. It's a Python application that is generating Python code.
Okay, let's unpack that a little bit. For the developers listening, what does that Python backbone let them do that a purely visual tool just can't?
It's the bridge. The Visual Studio gets you, say, 90% of the way there with speed. But the Python layer gives you 100% of the control.
So if I have some weird custom logic or a legacy API...
You don't hit a wall.
Okay.
Exactly. You just inspect the component's code, you modify it, or you just write a whole new custom component in plain Python.
And because it's open source, that helps with enterprise concerns too, right? Like security audits, you're not auditing a black box.
You're auditing Python code. It's complete transparency. Plus, the community is so active that if you build something really useful, you can contribute it back. It's an ecosystem built by developers for developers.
Okay, so with that engine in place, let's talk about actually building something. When you're in the studio, how does the visualization help you manage all the complexity?
It's a node-based architecture. If you've ever worked with data pipelines, it'll feel very familiar. You drag components on input, output, your agent, and you connect them. But the UI is, it's pretty smart about it.
Yeah, the sources mention the visual cues, the colors on the nodes.
Yes. They have these nice little colors that tell you the data type.
Right.
So a message might be blue, a data frame could be green. It's instant feedback. So you can trace the data flow without reading every single label.
And it sounds like it has some kind of intelligent autocomplete for the connectors, which must save a ton of time.
It's basically a compatibility checker. If you click on one node, let's say a text splitter, the UI automatically filters all the other components to only show you things that can connect to that output.
So no more trying to connect incompatible data types and wondering why it broke.
It just prevents that entire class of error.
So once you drag in the main agent component, you have to give it a brain. And this goes back to that agnostic approach, right? You just pick a model from that huge list.
Correct. You pick your model, your provider, including local ones. But, and this is a crucial technical point, if you're building an agentic workflow, one that takes actions,
Yes.
the model you pick must have tool support. If the underlying language model can't understand tool functions, your agent will just be a chatbot. It won't be able to do anything. Langflow makes sure you think about that up front.
Okay, so you're setting up the logic even visually. It's still a lot of trial and error. I don't want to have to do a full deployment just to test a prompt.
You definitely don't. That kind of debugging loop is what kills productivity. And that's why the playground feature is so
Or
important.
playground. Okay.
It's right there in the UI. You can just chat with your agent flow directly. You pass in inputs, you see the output, you see exactly where it might be breaking or misinterpreting something.
So I'm debugging the core logic and the prompts completely separate from my actual application stack. That must save days of frustration.
It's a huge efficiency gain. You make sure the logic is solid before you even think about connecting it to a real database or a UI.
Speaking of action, for an agent to do things, it needs tools. And this is where the automation in Langflow gets, well, really interesting.
This is where it starts to feel a bit like magic. Most of the components in Langflow, even simple ones like a URL loader, have a little tool mode switch.
The switch.
You just flip it on, connect it to your agent, and suddenly your agent has a new skill.
And the sources made a huge deal of this next part. Once it's hooked up, the agent just auto-discovers what it does.
It auto-discovers its function. It figures out what the tool is for, what inputs it needs, and when to use it, all on its own.
Uh-huh.
You don't have to write a bunch of configuration code telling it how.
That is a revolutionary step. It just understands the tool.
It grammatically reduces the manual work.
Yeah.
And this connects directly back to what we were saying about integrating complex things, like a microservice component platform and MCP.
Right. Let's spend a minute on that MCP integration. Developers use those to manage all their distributed services. Why is native support for that so important here?
Because AI apps don't live in a bubble. They have to talk to other enterprise services, logging, data validation, you name it. Langflow's MCP support means you can pull those existing tools right into your AI workflow. That's the first direction, tools coming in.
And the second direction sounds even more powerful.
It is. The second way is that your Langflow workflows themselves can be exposed as MCP tools. So you can build a really complex flow sentiment analysis, conditional writing, all of it. Build it once visually.
And then expose that whole thing as a single reusable component.
A single smart reusable MCP tool.
Exactly. So you've basically created a custom AI component with its own instructions and capabilities that another developer, maybe building a code companion, could just plug in and use.
Yes, you make that complex logic immediately reusable across your whole organization. It's a massive accelerator.
But okay, no matter how good the UI is, these apps need to talk to the rest of the world. How does Langflow handle that external connection and programmatic control?
Every single flow you build automatically gets its own dedicated API access. That API is the gateway. It's how other applications can run the flow, pass in data, stream the output, and get the responses.
And this is key. You're not locked into the settings you picked in the visual editor.
Right, not at all. That API gives you full programmatic control. Any parameter you can see in the UI, a model's temperature, the chunk size for a splitter, database credentials, all of that can be changed on the fly through the API.
Which is vital for any real production environment, for CI/CD pipelines.
Absolutely. Configuration needs to be dynamic, not just graphical.
We've covered the building blocks, but it's important to stress this isn't just for simple linear chains. We need to talk about handling real complexity.
Right. The source material had a great example of this. A flow that was using database access. It had multiple agents working together, conditional logic, and most importantly for production, it required structured output.
Let's pause on that. Structured output. That's often the hardest part of production AI.
Sure.
Why is getting a deterministic, structured response so critical?
Determinism is basically the contract between your AI and your application. If your UI is expecting a clean JSON object with customer names, you can't have the AI deciding to give you a bulleted list instead.
Right. The application would just break.
It would break instantly. Structured output forces the agent to conform deterministically to the exact format you need.
So you're basically giving the agent a schema, a contract, and it guarantees the output will match that contract, whether it's JSON or XML or whatever.
Precisely. It removes all the ambiguity.
Mm.
Without it, these multi-agent systems are just too brittle to ever deploy in a serious enterprise setting.
And this is where that visual aid really comes full circle. I mean, imagine trying to explain that system to someone. 5 agents, conditional logic, database hooks, structured output, just looking at code files.
It would be a nightmare. You'd never be able to onboard a new team member. The visualization makes that whole complex architecture transparent. It's instantly understandable. You can trace the logic and see the data flow without digging through thousands of lines of code.
It turns the complexity from a barrier into a visible roadmap.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So, to wrap up the value here, Langflow seems to deliver incredible speed through its visual playground, total flexibility from being model and vendor agnostic, and real enterprise power with things like tool auto-discovery, MCP support, and that full programmatic API. It's really bridging that gap between low-code speed and high-code control.
It is. And that leads to a final sort of provocative thought for you to think about. We talked about that surprising feature where the agent can auto-discover what a tool does just by flipping a switch.
Right.
So if the AI itself is becoming responsible for understanding how a component works and when to use it, what does that mean for the future of traditional human-written developer documentation for these systems? Is the AI, in a way, starting to document its own integration rules?
That's a fascinating thought. How much of that how-to manual is just being handed off to the agent itself? Thank you for sharing your sources with us for this deep dive into Langflow. We hope you feel thoroughly informed.